Today we're going to be talking about engines, and people have asked for me to explain a little bit about engines, so I'm going to hopefully give you some tips to increase your engine performance or sort out some problems that have been happening. Now I'm switching to this axis system instead of the slider system because it's a lot more stable and I like it. But all of the engines I have here except for those two are sliders because I didn't want to remake them all. The next thing is that Piston Model really has a huge effect. These piston models here, they are terrible. These cubes here, they're about as close as you can get to the jars, and the jars are the best model by far. I've tested just about every model, even the traffic cone thruster. Your crankshaft model doesn't really matter that much. You can use anything as long as that model is balanced. And even if a model looks like it's balanced, if you use a precision alignment, sometimes you'll see that the center of mass is actually not where it should be. But yeah, anything that's balanced and nice and has your anchor points for your ropes. I use these crankshafts now out of the crankshaft pack. You can just Google crankshaft pack and you'll find it. Okay, the next thing is weight. We know that to push this 50-pound block, it is going to take about a fourth of the power to push this 200-pound block. But that, if I'm applying the same load to each, I can push this one faster. However, when this one gets going here, this 200-pounder, when this one gets going, it's going to take longer to stop when I'm applying, or, well, just when it's sliding along. It's going to take longer to stop because it weighs more and it has more inertia. Engines work the same way. That's the reason that engines have a flywheel in the real world. It's to conserve energy that the engine generates, and when the car shifts, it's easier for that load to be transferred and maintained. So I have flywheels on my engine, but I don't really need them anymore. I just kind of do it out of habit. I could use an entity marketer on the crankshaft, but I like the flywheels. Even in my new one, I still have one here. I just like it. Okay, crankshaft. The bigger the crankshaft, the more torque you're gonna get, but it might be a little bit less stable. Especially if you use sliders, you'll get your crankshaft just jumping all over the place. Now, adding pistons. I know generally the thought is more pistons equals more power, but in Gmod this is not the case. If you have two pistons here that fire at the same point at the same time, see how they're both connected at the same point? Of course this engine is more balanced than this engine, but these two pistons here, this one and this one, combined with this one and this one, they add nothing except stability. If you dynamo this engine right here at the same thrust as an engine with these two pistons, it'll be dang near the same. It'll be a little bit less and a little bit more shaky because it's not really balanced, but it's a key factor that these two pistons together act as one piston. Pistons firing at the same time on the same point. You have to remember that second part. The same point act as one piston. And a good example of that would be this engine here. This engine here, even though it has 16 pistons, is the exact same as this engine here. I have another one of these with that model. It's the exact same as this engine here. All I did was I took this type of engine and I doubled it. And it's the exact same performance. It's a little bit more balanced. It doesn't go side to side as much, but it is the exact same performance. I mean, just because I doubled the engine, I didn't get double the thrust. It's a key point. And the reason that I do my engines like I do is these two pistons here may fire at the same time, but they are not on the same point on the crankshaft. And to further demonstrate that point, I made this one here, and it doubled the power. I have 4 pistons firing at the same time, but they are all on a different point. And then, of course, I made these here, and that was 4 times the power, because there are 8 points firing at the same time. Just remember that when you're making piston. These here may be balanced, but it's the same as a 2 piston. Okay, now the more often that a piston fires, and by that I mean right here on this engine, you have a piston firing every 180 degrees. Right there is 0, and then I turn it around 180. 0, and then 100, you get the point. This is, it's okay. I mean, if I have an engine that is firing every 360 degrees, if I just have it fire once every revolution, it's going to be okay, but that power is going to come in lumps. It's not as smooth. Whereas if we take the engine and have a point fire every 90 degrees, like here you see 0, 90, 180, and 270. And then we go back to 0. This engine is smoother than if I would have, say, 8 pistons all firing at the same time, like the first row here. So these 8 cylinders, if this engine was nothing except for these 8 cylinders in the front, these 8 cylinders would be equal to this engine, but it would not be nearly as smooth. The more often you have pairs of pistons or a piston firing, the smoother that engine will be. If I had an engine like this, but I extended it out to here, and I had this fire every 45 degrees, this engine would be smoother than this engine. And I know it's kind of complicated, but I hope I'm elaborating my point. Also, for this engine here, with one of my tests, all I did was I combined 2 of my engines. Oh crap. See, this engine here is doing something that I already didn't want it to do. This is again reiterating my point about some piston models not being the greatest. You can see how it's spazzing out, and I have the crankshaft frozen on this. I don't even, I mean the pistons are unfrozen, but the crankshaft isn't. This engine here is perfectly happy at anything. It's perfectly happy up to like 10,000, 15,000 thrusts. Frankly, I haven't had it higher than that, so I don't know. But this engine here is not happy at the same thrust. Why is that? Well, it's because models have just a huge effect. So if your engines are spazzing out, like this one here, you may want to try different models. The good thing about the axis system is if sliders were to spaz out like this, and I have had them do that under extreme circumstances, your game will probably crash. But with the axis system, the pistons do seem to lag up the game a little bit, but they don't crash the game, so that's always good. Now, I like building. I don't build V engines, not because I don't know how. I've built plenty of them. I don't build them because of their durability. Like, I can take this, I can be crazy with it. I'll smack it into the ground. It'll be all unhappy. I'll grab it by the piston, shake it around. Trying to get it to go into the ground and everything. Okay, so you can see it was quite distraught there, right? Now let me grab it. I need to get it over because the flywheel actually went through the ground. Alright, so you saw it was completely borked there. Well, still runs. Still runs perfectly. That's why I build my engines like I do, because they have the durability. Except for that one over there. If you have any questions about engines that I didn't answer, go ahead and ask. Also, it doesn't take, it might take me a second here to find this. ATV, right here. It does not take a huge engine to move. Aww. I guess it didn't save on that one. It doesn't take a huge engine to move a huge load. Here we have my little race car. And all we have is a 4-cylinder engine made by Mags, XXX Mags. This is my own suspension design here, kind of inspired by dune buggies. And you can see that it's not going anywhere. Oh, there it goes. So I guess equals is more. So we got this little engine moving. I don't even think it weighs that much. We got this little engine moving. It weighs 300, crank 150, pistons 10, and it's moving 420, 400, 200, and the supports for those wheels weigh quite a bit too. It's probably moving about 2,000, and it should be able to go. Now the shaking is due to my car design, not due to the engine. And you can see we're moving quite fast here, very fast indeed. And we only have this little 4-piston engine moving this thing at this fast. Again, the suspension isn't that great on that. So, you can do more with less. You don't need 32 cylinders. It's only if you want it. And I hope I've put in some points that will help you guys build your engines. Again, if you have more questions, ask. If you want a tutorial on something, ask. That way you can learn from my mistakes, and you don't build this. You build well, you build this when it looked nice, but it still runs.